Guardians of the Galaxy. What a bunch of a-holes. When the Guardians entered the stage of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they were intended to serve both a story and a business purpose. They were fresh meat. As it turns out, when you are making mass superhero films, after the second or third movie in a character's story, that star gains a lot of recognizability, fans online, and therefore a higher price tag for the studio to continue having them in their movies. And so Marvel was in a predicament when they realized they needed cheaper, new talent. Additionally, they had a huge story dilemma to continue relating back to the comics that were such a beloved source material for this new emerging and fast-growing universe. They needed characters that were going to take them to new places and introduce potential important stepping stones in the story, if you will, if you got where I'm going with this. So the Guardians was born, but bringing them onto the scene absolutely changed the game, not only because the movie was such a hit, but it brought back a bunch of old music that my dad continues to remind me was popular, in fact, prior to the Guardians movie coming out. But does he own it with the Guardians album logo? He does. So who's laughing now, Dad? The Guardians have continued to be a really steady, humorous, and exciting presence in the Marvel films. Now we find ourselves in 2023, Volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy at the close of their story. As you have grown more and more attached to these characters, you've learned more and more about their backstory, and if you've paid attention to any of the marketing of this film, there is one character in particular whose backstory we really dive into, and that, of course, is Rocket Raccoon. I'm not going to dive into what that backstory is, but it plays very directly into the villain of this story, which makes him feel, once again, more purposeful. I think the MCU is now at a point where they have had some really spectacular, good villains, even villains who have just shown up in one film and then died, jailed, whatever. And then they've also had recurring villains or villains that they've built towards who are, of course, more menacing. But then there's always been these kind of just like background, forgettable villains. The High Evolutionary, in my mind at least, is definitely in a former group, the first group, the big, scary bad guy that I'm going to remember for a long time. What you learn about him in the film is that he is a type of person who believes in creating a utopian society through the genetic experimentation. Let's just say there's certain world leaders in history's past that seem to have had the same qualities of this particular villain. And that allows this film to have a level of depth, complexity, and darkness that is, up until this point, been completely removed from the Guardians films specifically. Marvel has had its fair share of delving into deeper and darker topics, but this one in particular has such a immaculate balance that is struck between allowing you to feel these emotional, dark things and understand them while not letting that impact and rather enhancing your view of the story, because it's kind of like the concept of like there's no sunshine without rain. That's what the Guardians movie is. A lot of these characters have trauma in their past. They've experienced horrible things. Peter's mother died when he was just a child and then he was abducted. Drax's entire family has been abandoned. As we've learned about Mantis, she did not have a great upbringing. Gamora's father is quite literally a genocidal maniac. We see the way in which a creature like Rocket came to be the person that he is, but not just that. We get to understand that like the Guardians' humor is stemming from this place of trying to overcome darkness. There is a line in this movie that the High Evolutionary says, and I have to say it here because it speaks to how this film has been on my mind for almost a week now, which is there was no God, so I stepped in. That God complex of a villain, like good guys are supposed to fight bad guys that are well suited to their strengths and their theme. Like, of course, like fighting a Nazi is something that only Captain America would really be fittingly doing, right? This group of imperfect people going up against someone who literally believes that they should not exist because he feels that he has the right to determine who gets to live and die, go on to be a better version of themselves, who deserves to live in the best of societies if they're even achievable. Again, I feel like I'm just spewing a lot of words and nonsense, but this film really has sat with me. As much as I have harped on the point of this villain being intimidating and thought-provoking and very, very dark and complex, this film has a lightness to it that I think the credit just has to be given to the script of this film, to James Gunn himself for being both the writer and director of this film, and also the cast that has carried these characters and understood that the grief and bad things that have happened in the past are not the only things that define them. And that's what's been so fun about getting to see the Guardians become a ragtag group of heroes. It's always been about a little bit of bad and a little bit of good, and they don't do things the most orthodox way. And that's why this movie, of all the movies, has the MCU's first F-bomb, which I promise you is not disappointing. Like, it was fun. It was good. I enjoyed it. Also, just on a more surface level and technical aspects of the film, the fight choreography and camera work is some of my favorite in the MCU. Dare I say it? Dare I say it? James Gunn, again, if you're familiar with his work in previous Guardians films and his more recent work in the DC, the man just really has a talent for, again, like I said, bringing levity to these more, thoughts. Like things that just kind of sit there, and he doesn't even necessarily have to go into as much detail for you to for the ideas to kind of take root in your mind and you to process them and figure out what they mean to you. And I think that's the best kind of filmmaking there is. I cannot stress how phenomenal I found this film, how much it has resonated with me, sat with me, flipping through my mind, and I absolutely cannot wait to get another ticket to go see this one. Thank you guys so much for watching my review. Leave all your theories and predictions, and I will come out with a more casual spoiler discussion of the film so that you guys can really get my thoughts of it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing evening, and I will see you all in my very next video. Jeez, you do this for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You forgot to do an outro. Bye, guys.